Welcome back, Tarot fam. We're going to keep going with our Assassins series. We are on to President James Garfield, 1881. So he was a Republican president. He was killed by Charles J. Guiteau, Giteau. So not like gâteau, like the delicious chocolate that we enrobe some cakes with. So this particular assassin decided the only way to end the Republican Party's warfare was for the president to die. Apparently, he didn't have any issue against President Garfield. Was really kind of the politics of the moment that he had some issues with. But we're going to talk a little bit about his background because, woo, was this a trip down the crazy lane? So, just to give you some scope here. So, keep in mind that it was only 1865 when Lincoln had been assassinated. So 1881, it's just a hot minute after. At this point in history, they didn't consider President Garfield himself did not consider the assassination of President Lincoln an ongoing threat. He thought it was a fluke. He thought it was like a one-time thing. The country was still pretty new. We were still like a baby country. There were no augmented security measures for presidential candidates at this point. President Garfield was struck by 2 shots after Guiteau hid in a ladies' restroom. One shot glanced off his arm and the other went through his back, shattered a rib, embedded itself in his abdomen. President was taken back to the White House and his wife. And at this point in history, Joseph Lister of medical and antiseptic, Listerine, we all know him from that. His pioneering work in antisepsis was known to American doctors, but not a lot of them were practicing it. It really was kind of a new concept to them. So some of them weren't trained, some of them were, a little reserved in their usage of that. They just weren't really sure if that was the right thing to do. So there wasn't a lot of, no one was really advocating for it. So while he had about a dozen doctors in attendance, several of them were sticking their fingers into the wound with instruments. Their hands weren't sanitized. Like, you just got to think about it. Like they just had no idea about the little baby germs that are floating around all over the place. So, as a result, poor President Garfield was shipped off to Elberon, New Jersey, where I went to university, right there in Long Branch, New Jersey. They're right next to each other, and succumbed to his wounds. In fact, there's the building that he passed away in, I think, is still there, and I think it's on campus. So, he seemed to make some improvement over a few days, but he never really recovered. And he succumbed to actual gangrene 2.5 months later after being moved to Elberon, New Jersey. The shooting occurred only 4 months into his term as president. So, unfortunate loss for the United States, losing a second president in just a short time to an assassin. Now, let's talk about Charles Julius Guiteau. Guitea. Oh, what you? Sorry, not oh. It's AU. AEAU is oh. And I just said that. So anyway, so he was born in Freeport, Illinois, of French Huguenot ancestry. The Huguenots were French Protestants. They were involved in a bunch of wars. I'm not going to go down that slippery slope here. We're just not going to do that. But suffice it to say, they went head to head with the Catholic Church a lot. So there may have been a little bit of that. We're going to see that Guiteau's father is a little bit interesting as well. So born September 8th, 1841, died on June 30th, 1882. So he was fairly young. He felt that he got President Garfield elected. He felt like he had a a hand in that, and he was owed a consulship. So I'm going to define what consulship is. CONSULSHIP. So a consul is an official representative of government who resides in a foreign country to assist and protect the citizens of the consul's country and to promote and facilitate commercial and diplomatic relations between the two countries. It's like an ambassadorship light. That's kind of the best way to put it.
If this is a consularship, where is its ambassador?
Are you going to force choke me?
Are you into that? Are we into that?
No. Gregopedia in the house. So his background, his academic career was spotty. He attempted to test into the University of Michigan, but failed his entrance exams because he did not have the adequate academic training. So his primary training was not very good. So he crammed his French and algebra at Ann Arbor High School in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and attempted to get in. He did quit before obtaining his certificate because he was getting letters from his father, and his father was extolling the benefits of the Oneida community. What is the Oneida community? Again, we're going down like a little fun path here. So the Oneida community was a religious group. It was a utopian religious sect in Oneida, New York. And this group supported communal living, group marriages. They believed also that Jesus had already returned to earth in AD 70. They also have an interesting footnote in early eugenics. They developed something called stirrup culture, STIRP culture, CULTURE. So the word is developed from stirps, STIRPS, which means stock, stem, or root. So a part of this rule in the community, or this concept in the community, there was a rule for men that they had to practice male continence, which basically means you get the squeeze, but not the juice. I can't even put it any other way. So this was a way to manage the human breeding within the group. Now, at some point, Charles got kicked out of this group, and his legacy in the group, even though his father was still there, was that the term Charles get out was taken, and they used it for other people that they kicked out of the group. His father stayed as a part of the group, stayed as a supporter of that group. So it's always nice, like Markle, he's Charles get out. They kicked him out. At this point, he went to Hoboken, New Jersey. Why wouldn't he? Why wouldn't he go here? And he attempted to start a newspaper based on the Oneida religion called the Daily Theocrat. This newspaper failed terribly, and he attempted to go back to the community. The community again rejected him. They didn't want him there, so he decided to sue some of the leaders when he left. His father was so embarrassed by this behavior that his father wrote letters in support to the court of the leaders that were being sued. The leaders thought that Charles Guiteau was irresponsible and insane. So here we have a fairly unique fundamental group that is kicking this individual out. Communal ideas, again, we're starting to see a little bit of a theme. He did secure some work in Chicago as a law clerk and married a lovely young librarian named Annie Bunn. Annie Bunn later detailed his dishonest dealings in bill collection, where he would keep the collections, not return them to the collector, the law firm. He just wasn't doing his job, and he was just keeping the money. So he did have to scoot off to New York with his lovely wife and avoid bill collectors and disgruntled former clients. So once in New York, he was not a good husband. He was actually pretty terrible. Apparently, he was physically to her. And when she asked for a divorce in 1874, he obliged by having with a prostitutka who then testified about his infidelity. So this isn't a guy who's kind of, putting the drawing the dots, connecting the dots. I'm not connecting them either. Um, so he then where did he go at this point? He plagiarized a book at one point. He wrote a book called The Truth, which was almost entirely plagiarized by one of the leaders at the Oneida community. His father at this point, 1875, was convinced that that his son was possessed by Satan. And conversely, Guiteau himself became increasingly convinced that his actions were divinely inspired and that he was to preach a new gospel like Paul the Apostle. So it's really getting in deep. He was wandering from town to town in December 1877. Wandering from town to town, and in 1877 December, he gave a lecture at the Congressional Church in Washington, D.C. He got involved in politics at this point. Now, remember, his wife is gone. His father's really distancing himself. And Guiteau has now turned to politics. So at this point in the United States, the Republican Party split into two factions: the stalwarts and the led by Roscoe Conkling, and the half-breeds who supported James Blaine. Guiteau decided to go with the stalwarts and wrote a speech in support of Grant called Grant versus Hancock, which he revised later to be Garfield, as in President Garfield, against Hancock. So Garfield was not affiliated with either faction. He still won the Republican nomination. Guiteau wrote a speech for Garfield and gave it a few times and pretty much thought that was what won the election for him. He thought, his one little speech won the election for him, kind of like getting a soap commercial changed. I know you Markle people are here. So he insisted that to others that he should have gotten a consulship for this, that he would have been able to prevent actions that were going on in Europe, different things. And that was a lot. He really did think that he was the reason that Garfield got elected and that he just wasn't taken care of. We're going to take a look at this. Is this a little bit of mind tinkering, or was this all in his own head? So as always, I know, long intro, but I'm trying to educate you guys while I'm here. Trying to do some education. And we're going to bring up the card view. So let's get his state of mind at the time of the assassinations. Let's get his state of mind. Seven of Swords. Yeah, hard done by. Felt he was hard done by. Seven of Cups. There we go. This, remember I said earlier in the earlier video that this was possibly going to be our MK card. It's not in this sense. This is really somebody who's just troubled. I'm just going to say that. I think, again, like if we're talking about the influx of information, this echo chamber that he put himself in, I think there's some organic stuff going on at the same time, but I think he is kind of concocting all of this himself. Three of Pentacles. No one else was onto the same things that he was. He thought he was an innovator. He thought he was a groundbreaker. He thought he was going to change the world with a Coke and a smile. That's what he thought. So we're going to do one more for the future outcome. Ace of Swords. Didn't work. All of his avenues do not work. So, and there we go. Happy squirrel, sad squirrel, Queen of Swords, Eight of Wands, licking my fingers, Ace of Wands. So this would be ultimate fire. We get that from a thing that we hold in our hands and take out a president with it. That's what we get. So this is the ultimate decision, but it's a poor decision. You can see that with the Ace of Swords in reverse, this Seven of Swords, letting that chaos come to the surface, letting the chaos direct him. So if he thought he was on a mission from God, like the Blues Brothers, he really let that take hold. Now we have Sad Squirrel, Happy Squirrel, and these cards are specific to this particular deck. That Sad Squirrel is balanced by this one. This is how he sees himself. This is what his mind is like. This is very kind of bipolar thinking. So I think we've got some more organic issues, more so than, implanted ideas and concepts. I'm going to pull one of Alicia's cards just to see what we get. We're just going to pull one here. Confession. Confession. So oddly enough, that is a religious card. So we're going to keep that. This is a mission from God. He is trying to right the wrongs of the world, trying to create balance, trying to make changes with his actions, which is crazy. The hope is that he can change the direction of things. When we get this Eight of Wands, that is a hope that we change directions. If you notice, there's a lot of bipolar stuff in here. We have the Ace of Swords, Ace of Wands. These are in opposition. We have the Queen of Swords, who is moving very quickly and making decisions rationally, but we have things moving backward here. Reality is that they move backward. Here, simpler times. He thought that bringing things back to a simpler time, raising things to the ground would make things easier, more manageable for himself. So, here we go. Yeah, like that's what I think this guy, I think he was a little nanny boo boos. Unfortunately, I think he was a little nanny boo boos. So let's do this. When he crossed over, did he get clarity on his actions? Was there clarity from his actions? Sad squirrel. No. Unfinished business. He was mad. Not going to rest. He was very restless after. Until that judgment. He got a do-over. He got very dysregulated. No one's going to give me a chance. They threw him back into the cycles, these spiritual HR guides. They threw him back into the cycle with this lesson to relearn. So if there is some instability in the one lifetime, I think we go into another lifetime with some more instability. Religious fervor is something that comes through. He really was swept up in the religious fervor of this, and the concepts of uh, different progressive religions, let's put it that way. It wasn't enough to look at the Catholic scriptures. It wasn't enough to look at the Protestant Huguenot scriptures. He wanted something more progressive. And I think that's that lily pad from one to the next that really kind of opened the door for him to say, well, I'm just going to make this up as I go along. But he wasn't quite as intellectual as to be able to do that. So yeah, thrown back into the mix, maybe have another opportunity to make a decision like this, be in leadership. So yeah, not so fun. So whew, as we are looking at sketchy individuals who have done terrible things, I'm going to take a little break now. I'm going to go upstairs. I'm going to have a piece of German coffee cake, because we still have some German coffee cake from Saturday. In the next video, we're going to talk about President William McKinley, who was killed in 1901. That's another interesting one. Before we get there, a little fun fact, not so fun fact, with President Garfield, Whoop. X-ray imaging could have assisted the physicians in precisely locating that bullet that was in his body, but it wouldn't be invented for another 14 years. But we're going to see it didn't help McKinley either. So we skip right over to McKinley, and he doesn't get the chance to have that work out either. So from 1881 to 1901, yeah, still not available. Technology still not available for him. So I hope you're enjoying this series. We are going to get to the modern ones in a minute. I'm not going to do all of these in chronological order because I want to talk about some of the modern ones as well. So we're going to talk about Thomas Crooks. We're going to talk about this new bozo, Ryan Routh. So I'm mentioning names. I'm taking names and
Did you know his wife?
the bozos, yes. So we will be back. I'm going to take a little break. As always, please like, share, and subscribe. Take advantage of my sale. Keep signing up for the free tarot class because I'm going to have the actual one done this week, hopefully. All right. Thanks so much, everybody. I'll see you soon.